Howdy y'all, Kaloth here. Happy Tuesday. I hope everybody's enjoying their new Leviathan, or if you don't have Leviathan, I hope you're enjoying watching the tears of those of us who do as we're working out bugs and defensive viability and looking for some answer from CG as to what's going to come next for that, what kind of fixes are going to come in. In this video, I wanted to talk about something that's not Leviathan related. I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about Galactic Legend Leia, because there's something interesting when you look at previous Galactic Legends, and I've talked to several people, including a few guildies, about this. Every Galactic Legend, up until this point, has had sort of a nesting doll requirement, right? It's required a character from the Journey Guide that itself requires other characters to earn. For instance, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren requires Emperor Palpatine, who is a legendary character, requires 5 rebels to earn Emperor Palpatine. Rey requires Jedi Training Rey and BB-8. Jedi Master Luke requires Jedi Knight Luke, which also requires R2-D2 and CLS. He requires Jedi Training Rey. I'd have to go back and look, but I believe he requires C-3PO, or Jedi Knight Luke requires C-3PO. Long story short, Jedi Master Luke has a number of those kind of nesting dolls. Jedi Master Kenobi didn't require a whole lot, right? He required Padme. But Lord Vader required Padme and General Anakin Skywalker. So all these GLs have these varying levels of investment required in their own requirements. So the question is, what will they choose for Leia? Or will Leia be the first Galactic Legend to not require a unit that itself has requirements? I don't know. I don't think we have any indication one way or the other there, but I do think there are several options that Leia could pull from, and I wanted to talk about those and talk about what I think are some of the pros and cons to each, both from CG's perspective and from a player's perspective. So let's get into that. The first one here is Commander Luke Skywalker. Now, Commander Luke Skywalker, he's very relevant to Leia's story, right? This is the Empire Strikes Back version of Luke, but really any Luke is going to be relevant here. He's very new player friendly. This is one of the earliest journeys that a new player can go on, and still is one that's relevant throughout the course of the game so far, right? If he was going to be required, I think just from CG's perspective, I think that he would be a likely candidate for Relic 8 or Relic 9, because so many established players have CLS at early to mid relics already. I know a lot of people have him at least to Relic 5 just for datacrons, or even higher depending on where you're using him and what level of play you're at. So if CLS would be required, he would be I think a high relic requirement, R8 or R9, but is one of the options there, and is one of the first ones that comes to my mind. Now, another option, and this is one that I don't think players want to see, is Profundity. Leia was on board Profundity during Rogue One, even leading right into the opening of A New Hope, right? In A New Hope, Leia is aboard the Tantive 4, that rebel blockade runner that has the Death Star plans and is trying to escape from Darth Vader. Well, at the end of Rogue One, you see that the Tantive 4 is right there in the kind of hangar bay of Profundity, right aboard Scarif when that final battle happens. So Leia was there, she was on board the Profundity. It makes sense for her journey. This would be pretty new player unfriendly, although not the most unfriendly towards new players, because Profundity itself does require a significant level of investment. You need 1 Relic 9, Admiral Raddus, 1 Relic 8, Cassian Andor, and then several Relic 7 and Relic 5 characters to unlock Profundity. Which means that from CG's perspective, I don't know that this would necessarily need a lot of other high relic requirements. Otherwise, Leia just becomes a significant investment over previous Galactic Legends. At the same time, there's kind of a consideration there of, if CG were to require Profundity, so many in-game players already have Profundity that this would be kind of a freebie for them, even though this would be a significant hurdle to new players. So I don't know where their calculus would fall there. It could go one way or the other. But Profundity, I don't think it's one that we can rule out yet. I think it's definitely on the table. Another option is Jedi Knight Luke. He's the most connected to this version of Leia, Return of the Jedi Leia. But he's already needed for 2 Galactic Legends. You need Jedi Knight Luke at Relic 7 for Jedi Master Luke. And for Jabba the Hutt. So with him already needed in 2 other places, I think if he were to be required, and it's very possible he could, I think it's almost a near certainty that he would need an R8 or an R9 just for CG to get a little bit more investment there. Which could be interesting, right? Because I don't think a lot of people are incentivized to take Luke past Relic 7. Those higher relic levels for most players in the game are going to be strictly reserved for requirements, right? I only have a couple of luxury relic 8s. I don't have any luxury relic 9s. It's just not something that a lot of players are able to do on a whim, even for a character so good as Jedi Knight Luke. So as far as relic 8, relic 9 requirements go, this is one that I wouldn't be too upset about. I'd prefer higher relics on tanks, because tanks just benefit so well from high relics, but Jedi Knight Luke would be okay. But again, already needed for 2 GLs. I don't know that I super expect it. Definitely possible. Here's the one that I think a lot of people are afraid of. Reva, or third sister, she's relevant to Leia's story, right? The spoiler alert for the Obi-Wan series, if you haven't watched it yet, it's been more than a year. Kind of the story of the Obi-Wan series is that Reva, as an Inquisitor, is trying to hunt down Obi-Wan, knows that Obi-Wan had connections to Bail Organa, and so says, hey, I'm going to kidnap Bail Organa's daughter because maybe he'll try to pull Obi-Wan out of hiding. She doesn't obviously know that, Leia has this deeper connection to Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader, that kind of thing, but she is very relevant to Leia's story since she kidnapped younger Leia. But she's very new player unfriendly, right? If this Galactic Legend is going to be marketable to a wide audience, you can't have requirements like this. If CG were to decide to require Reva or Third Sister, it would rule it out for a lot of people, right? There are a lot of mid-game, early-game accounts who would just write it off, say, hey, I'm never going to get to that point, I'm not close to it, I'm not in a guild that can get Reva shards, and it's going to take me years and years to get to that point. The reality of it is it might not take years and years, but that's how those players are going to think, and I don't think you're going to want to have 2 big meta characters, one after another, the first being Leviathan, that have these accessibility hurdles that lock it away from early and mid-game players, because it's important for the long-term health of the game to keep those players on the hook. So, personally, I hope this doesn't happen. I don't think it's likely, but it is definitely possible. One nice thing about this is because Reva is such a steep investment already, both in relics and, more importantly, in time and guild coordination, I don't think she would need high relic requirements. I think if I'm CG and I'm requiring Reva, I don't think I'm going to require her at R8 or R9. And honestly, if I'm a player who has Reva, I'm not going to complain about her being required at R8 or R9 either. So take that as you will. And then finally, this is one that I actually really like the idea of, where I don't like the idea of Reva. Grand Inquisitor he's lore adjacent to Leia, right? He's important to Reva, who is important to Leia, but Grand Inquisitor himself doesn't really have that close a connection to Leia at all. But he leads into Reva, and that changes that dynamic completely, where Reva is kind of a feel bad for those early and mid-game accounts, thinking, oh, I'm not in a guild that's working towards that, I don't think I'll ever be able to get there, it's going to take too long. A character like Grand Inquisitor is much more readily accessible in their mind. They don't have to have any guild effort, they don't have to have any time effort outside of taking those 5 Inquisitors up to Relic 5. And then at that point, they naturally are going to want to move into Reva because they're going to have Grand Inquisitor. I think The early adopters of the Inquisitors that ship has sailed, right? If you're not on the Inquisitor train yet, you are not an early adopter. But guild leaders for those early and mid-game guilds, I think, are going to start having problems getting players who are invested in Inquisitors and who are ready to go, instead of players who are already moving on to Jedi Knight Cal and whatever else is next, and might write Inquisitors off at this point. So having Grand Inquisitor as a requirement would be kind of a throwing a bone to those early and mid-game guilds by increasing the pool of players who are working on Inquisitors. That said, from CG's perspective, this is kind of a freebie for established players, right? Anybody who is playing at a certain level has invested in Inquisitors for quite a while now, and has Grand Inquisitor at Relic 7 already. So, not that we don't get those kind of freebies, we get them all the time with Galactic Legends, but that's one consideration there. And then finally, the droids, right? R2-D2 and C-3PO. From a Leia perspective, I think R2-D2 especially, when you think about iconic moments in Star Wars, iconic visuals in Star Wars, that visual of Princess Leia kneeling down, giving the Death Star plans to R2-D2, and then recording that, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi" message in the first Star Wars movie, in A New Hope. One of the most iconic things that I can think of in Star Wars. And for that reason, I think R2-D2 at the very least will be required. I don't think that rules out any of the previous characters we talked about being required, but I think R2-D2 at least will be required. That says he'll probably need high relic requirements, right? If you've got Jedi Master Luke, you already have R2-D2 at Relic 7. I think it's... of course, they could pull a Jabba, right? Jabba required Jedi Knight Luke at Relic 7, the same as Jedi Master Luke did. They could very well do that again here. This could be one of the freebies that you get if you're one of those established players who already has JML. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you see something like a Relic 8 or a Relic 9 R2-D2. I'm not expecting a lot of Relic 8s. I don't even know that I'm expecting any Relic 9s for Leia, but it's definitely an option, especially if you've got characters like this who are highly farmed and highly relicked. They're already needed for multiple GLs, and yeah, I see the typo there in that slide, and yeah, I'm not going to go back and try to fix it. Obviously, there should be an E at the end of multiple, but they're already needed for multiple GLs. I don't think that's a consideration one way or the other. Again, we've got a lot of that overlap now, and that's just the world we're going to be living in. So in any case, that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as, requirements for Leia, those, nesting doll journey style requirements. Like I said, I think we'll definitely get R2 and then possibly another of the above. My personal hope is kind of Grand Inquisitor. Even though he makes the most sense from a lore connection, he doesn't really have any connection to Leia. He leads into Reva, who does, and I think that would actually be good as far as something that pushes those early to mid-game players into farming towards Reva. That said, if Reva is required, my guild is looking on track to have her unlocked before then. So I don't think it's going to affect me too much, but I think it would affect a lot of those early to mid-game players, and I just hope they don't go that way. But what do you think? Where do you think they're going to go? What do you think the requirements are going to be? Do you think she's going to require multiple, legendary or hero's journey characters? Or do you think she's going to be more approachable and the kind of high cost is going to be in Relic 7 for her marquee? So let me know in the comment section below. As always, you know how YouTube works. You know how to do. I don't want to dwell on asking for likes and subscribes a lot in my videos. I'm playing around with several different things. In a couple of videos, I've asked at the beginning, and I don't know how I felt about that. I honestly don't even know how I feel about this right now. So that's something that I would love to hear from you. If you'll take a moment in the comment section and tell me as far as self-promotion for a YouTube channel, saying, hey, for the algorithm, make sure you like, subscribe, bell icon, all that. What do you like to see? What turns you off? What do you think is just kind of a normal operating procedure? What do you want to see from content creators on YouTube for that kind of thing? So, all that said, comment section, yada yada. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.